Sunday because there were just so many unanswered questions.
Nick? Stay on the phone with me. Who shot you? I didn't do anything in that house.
Heidi's not responsive. Nick's been injured.
You're like, what? What do you hear from neighbors? Were they able to see anything, hear anything?
They were like a picture-perfect couple.
Who would do this to this young couple?
His story of an intruder coming into the house was the only story that made sense.
You and her never mentioned this to either set of parents. None of our parents or none of our friends. No one knows about this except you and I. So then
What did he tell you about this intruder?
He was really big. My twin brother's 6'1", 6'2". So he's that big?
That's when we were given the sketch of this alleged intruder.
She said, I know who's in that sketch. We had maybe found our guy.
Were you ever concerned that you're sleeping with a killer? This is a story about a young married couple just starting out. They'd recently bought their first home, and they had a lot of promise ahead of them.
Nick and Heidi Furcus were in their 20s, very active in their church, very family-oriented, the kind of couple that you hope all couples would be in their early 20s.
Heidi and Nick lived in the Midway neighborhood of St. Paul. It was a very quiet, very family-friendly part of our city.
This is just a fantastic, tight-knit community. Heidi and Nick were a part of that.
In Minnesota, it takes a number of summers to get to know your neighbors because we are holed up for most of the winter. Good, quiet neighbors would occasionally speak to Nick, when they're running in and out of their homes.
It was a Sunday morning that should have been like any other, with Heidi and Nick getting ready to join their friends and family at church. But this Sunday would change the couple's lives forever.
April 25th, 2010 starts off as a quiet Sunday morning in the Hamlin Midway neighborhood. Sun is shining.
I was patrol supervisor for the St. Paul Police Department. It was like 6:30 in the morning, but it had been a fairly quiet night. We were all just getting ready to go home for the day.
State Patrol 911. Someone tried to break into my home.
The 911 call is from Heidi Furcus. She's calm, but you can tell that she's scared.
What city are you in, St. Paul?
I'm in St. Paul.
What address are you at?
Minnehaha, everything.
Minnehaha, someone's trying.
The call ends very abruptly with a loud noise, and what that noise is exactly, we didn't know on the front end.
Several of us officers took the call and began our response. I activated my emergency lights. Certainly gets your blood going.
Shortly after the first 911 call is abruptly ended, another 911 call comes in.
State Patrol 911.
This time it's from Nick Furcus. And Nick is screaming into the phone.
Okay, hold on a sec. Are you in a house or an apartment? What's the problem? We're been shot. Wait, you've been shot? Yes, please. Stay on the phone with me, okay? Okay.
You can hear the panic in his voice. He's hysterical. He's crying. He's screaming.
Nick? Stay on the phone with me. Who shot you? I have a son broken in that house. They need to be here now. Okay, we're going to help out there right now. Go ahead. Well, you said your wife is shot also? Yeah. She's not moving. She's not breathing. Oh, please. Okay. Nick, take a slow deep breath. I've got a lot of help coming.
Myself and three other officers arrived on scene within 5-10 seconds of each other. We know that we have potential gunshot victims.
They find the outside screen door open and the front door propped open just a little bit.
We don't know if the suspect or suspects are still at the address, so we do have our firearms out. There's an officer just to my left that kicks the door.
They enter the house tactically because they don't know if there's still an intruder in the house.
Nick is on the 911 call, and you can hear the police arriving to render aid.
There was that very distinct smell of recently fired gunshot. We observe a female down in the kitchen area, and then we see a male.
The officers at that point quickly walk through the house to make sure that there isn't another potential suspect inside. They see Nick and Heidi in the kitchen, and Heidi's not responsive. Nick's been injured.
Nick tells the police that the intruder broke in, and the two of them wrestled over Nick's shotgun. It was absolutely terrifying, and then the shotgun went off, and Heidi got shot in the back.
During this struggle with the intruder, Nick had been shot one time from a double-barrel shotgun. He was screaming and he was upset and he needed an ambulance immediately.
Heidi had been shot in her upper back. She had lost a significant amount of blood. She had no signs of life.
They pronounced Heidi Furcus deceased at the scene.
Nick was transported by St. Paul fire paramedics fairly quickly down the Regions Hospital, which is one of the level 1 trauma centers in St. Paul.
What was the crime scene like? What did you discover in the house?
There was a pair of jeans laying in the foyer area, and then the shotgun was laying there on the ground as well, right inside the doorway.
The shotgun belongs to Nick. It's his hunting gun. It's a double barrel, and he kept it in the closet of his bedroom for safety.
We also saw the pellets that were in the door frame as well as the door itself from when Nick was shot by the intruder.
Officers also photographed what looked like tool marks on the front door along the frame as if someone were trying to jimmy it open.
When a call comes in of somebody that's been shot at 6 in the morning in an April spring morning, we have a massive police response.
A canine officer had responded to see if he could track the suspect from the front door.
Officers and investigators begin canvassing the whole area to talk to anybody we can. We begin looking for cameras on houses or people out walking their dogs. We're looking for any sign of anything, of someone running away.
Who would do this to this young couple?
Maybe they had an interaction with the intruder, maybe met them the day before.
The one person that police need to talk to is the lone survivor, the one witness, Nick Furcus.
But then I started hearing, feeling with her door knock.
There was an intruder trying to burglarize the home?
That's when the struggle took place between Nick and the intruder. I try to shut the door shut, but it gets forced open.
Nick told us that he began having a fight for his life.
The gun went off.
We were all looking for that intruder.
Nick and Heidi Furcus were a young, devout couple, members of the Calvary Church. Everybody who knew them knew that their faith was at the center of their lives.
Everyone looked up to Nick and Heidi. They both loved Jesus and had their priorities, in the right place.
I remember the first time that I even walked into Calvary, it's a feeling of just like families, like a ton of families. When you go there, you don't just go to church, you're involved in something.
Nick and Heidi were both very active in their church, and they each led youth groups, and they would take the kids on these great camping trips through Minnesota.
Minnesota's a land of 10,000 lakes, so it's known for a lot of fishing, hunting, just general outdoor life.
St. Paul is a fantastic place. We are the shadow city to Minneapolis, but we're the capital city. The Furcuses lived in the Hamlin Midway neighborhood. It's a safe community with a lot of single-family homes, small businesses. and some local colleges.
I remember when Nick and Heidi bought the house. They were very excited. I wouldn't necessarily call it a fixer-upper, but it also wasn't a beautiful, pristine, no work needed house.
Nick and Heidi had everything going for them.
They were like a picture-perfect couple. They had a very sweet relationship. They were very loving.
The way that he loved Heidi was how I hoped to be loved. Very outwardly, and that nothing else really mattered because he had Heidi.
She was always smiling, always joyful, cheerful, and kind of had this mischievous edge to her. But that's what made her fun. She was always joking around with people, and yet she had this depth to her.
Nicholas Farkas worked at his family business, a kind of subcontracting business that does carpet and various installations and is quite successful.
Nick was very much a mentor to me. I wanted to be like him, to try to learn what it meant to be a Christian man.
On Sunday mornings, Nick and Heidi were found here with friends and family ready to worship. Every Sunday morning, that is, until April 25th, 2010.
I went to church. It was a normal Sunday morning, and I don't even remember who came up in a panic and said Heidi got shot. There was an intruder, and that was about all the information we had. And it was overwhelming, right? Like, you're like, what?
And the news would only get worse. Heidi doesn't make it, and they find out that Nick has been rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound.
The injury that he suffered was from a shotgun blast to the upper thigh.
Nick's injuries did not appear to be life-threatening.
Once Nick was treated at Regents Hospital, the officers escorted him over to our police station. I was waiting there at our homicide office. This up here is our interview room where we talk to some of the victims and witnesses.
Okay. Tell me about Nick when he got here. What kind of shape was he in? What was his mind like?
He was in some pain. He was on his crutches, so he was moving fairly slowly.
What, the low one or the high one? Or who the high one? All right. There you go.
I told him I wanted to back up at least 24 hours.
This is a very traumatic situation, okay? And I'm just going to try and ease into it, okay? So what I'd like to do is just try to kind of backtrack a little bit, you know?
Maybe they had an interaction with somebody and that the intruder might have maybe met them the day before.
My wife was meeting a friend at our house because they were going to go to America for some spring shopping. I stayed at home.
Nick sent her a message telling her that he wanted to spend time with her alone on Saturday night, and that they ended up watching the movie Avatar. They ordered dinner, and they each had a glass of wine while watching the movie.
Before you went to bed, did you lock up the house or anything? Or if I'm honest, I don't know if I remember to throw the whole.
Nick tells the police the next day that he woke up around 6 in the morning, was thirsty, went to the bathroom, got a drink of water, climbed back into bed and was starting to fall asleep again. And then he heard something at the front door, which woke him up.
I heard the screen door open, and so I kind of let it go for a little while, but then I started fiddling with our doorknob.
He then goes to the closet to retrieve his shotgun.
And then I wake up Heidi, okay? And then I said, Heidi, somebody's fiddling with our knob trying to get into our house. Let's get your shoes on and let's go out to the garage. Let's get out of here.
They proceeded to go downstairs.
Heidi's in front of him. He's got a shotgun in the left hand, and he's pushing Heidi along down the stairs.
And as they made the turn to go by the front door towards their kitchen, somebody burst through that front door, and that's when he began having a fight for his life with an intruder.
I don't remember exactly when the gun went off, so my fingers slipped on the trigger. So, yeah, I know I hit Heidi. I know I did.
Do you use the crutches to talk about how this played out?
Yeah, actually, I tried to reenact part of the scene out there at the house, and I picked up the crutch to use as a shotgun as a point of reference for Nick to tell me how he and this intruder struggled over the weapon.
I get it up, up and over.
So you pointed at him?
No, it was like straight up and over.
Okay, so you're like
barrel down.
Oh, so the barrel's down.
What did he tell you about this intruder? Did he have a good description?
He thought he was a black male, but was not entirely sure.
What did this guy look like? I think he was a black guy.
with a dark hooded sweatshirt, but I did not get a good look.
Well, he was giving me a little more detailed information than he gave the officers who initially arrived at the scene.
But he was really big. My twin brother's 6'1", 6'2". So he was that big? He was probably that big, yeah.
He now has a little bit more of a description, which was good for us to go on. In the Hamlin Midway area specifically, there's not a lot of violent crime that goes on in those single-family home areas.
Oh, there's minor crime, certainly.
Our garage was broken into a couple of times. Once I left the door open and the guy just came in and stole stuff. There was one time Heidi had all the girls over and then had a sleepover afterwards. Overnight, one of the girls had her car had gotten broken into.
What do you hear from neighbors? Were they able to see anything, hear anything?
They weren't able to give us any information about seeing anybody running away from the house or anything like that.
The only thing that was discussed by neighbors was sounds that they heard. The neighbor directly to the west of the property, he heard what he thought was 2 gunshots.
And that neighbor remembered looking outside and not seeing anybody running away from the scene. We had our canine officers immediately begin try to scent track the area. And generally when somebody's running, they're going to emit a lot of sweat and odor, and our dogs were not able to pick up any scents that day.
Police at the scene and in the neighborhood are coming up short. Meanwhile, downtown at the police station, the interview with Nick Furcus is about to take a surprising turn.
We have to be out by Monday, tomorrow.
Was this couple keeping a secret?
No one knows about this except you and Distance. And
I was quite shocked hearing that information.
Ordinarily on a Sunday morning, Nick Furcus would be in church. Instead, he's at police headquarters explaining what happened at his house just hours earlier.
Every question that I asked, he answered. There wasn't a time in our conversation where he said, Sergeant Gray, I don't want to answer that question.
How long have you been married for? For 4.5 years. You guys have any problems or anything like that? It's just the normal stuff, but I would say we're still best friends.
While this break-in and murder is a little strange for the neighborhood, police don't find any red flags in Nick or Heidi's past.
Nick had no criminal history at all whatsoever.
Oftentimes, there will be domestic disturbances. There was nothing like that.
Guy to guy here. Mm-hmm. Every guy's got needs and urges, concerns, however you want to put it. Are you stepping out at all by chance? To other women? Yeah, no, absolutely not. All right. Well, yeah, I'm not here to judge you, okay, Nick? Absolutely not. We had a lot of trust in that part of our relationship, for sure.
But as Detective Gray goes on with the interview, Nick does eventually reveal a secret.
You guys aren't behind the bills or anything? We're not behind in the bills, which is a little stressful.
In questioning, Nick divulges that they were in some financial trouble.
They were actually getting foreclosed on and have to be moving out the very next day.
The next day, April 26th at noon, the sheriffs were to show up and forcibly remove them.
And this is a hard place for us. We foreclosed on our house. Okay, we have to be out by Monday. Tomorrow.
When you step back and you look at the time we're talking about.
We begin tonight with the housing crisis.
The nation's foreclosure crisis shows no end in sight.
Nick and Heidi were like a lot of families who were upside down on their mortgage and on the verge of losing their home.
President Obama is expected to unveil his plan for dealing with a surge in foreclosures.
Even though Nick and Heidi's financial troubles weren't exactly unusual at the time, he says they were ashamed.
This has been kind of a private struggle for us. Well, it's kind of close notice. It is. We're both kind of dealing with the shame of the whole thing because we're embarrassed that we haven't been able to be honest with our friends about our struggles.
Nick Nick then explains that they also have a lot of credit card debt as well.
Just out of curiosity, what's the total for the credit cards then? It's a little over 15. Okay.
The Ferguses were in dire financial distress. They had a substantial credit card debt, overdrafts in their checking account. They just were living paycheck to paycheck.
Did he give you any indication of what the people knew about it?
No, it was their secret. It was Heidi and Nick's secret that they were getting evicted the very next day, that they didn't disclose that any information to either family or friends.
Trying to talk to everybody about it tomorrow and crash into a place. So you and her never mentioned this to either set of parents? None of our parents or none of our friends. No one knows about this except you and just then Heidi.
There were no signs the couple was packing up and preparing for a move. The refrigerator was still stocked with food. There were few, if any, boxes packed with belongings.
It did not look like anybody was planning to go on a long vacation, let alone moving out of the house.
It just seems like you're kind of putting yourself against the clock. I mean, if you knew this train was coming, you kind of get ready for it. Yeah, the significant part of it is the shape of the whole thing. We're pretty crippled by it.
Nick told us that Heidi was very aware of that situation and that she and him kept it a secret. But when we talked to the family, they could not believe that their house was being foreclosed on and Heidi hadn't told a soul. The issue becomes, why didn't Heidi tell her family?
Beyond the embarrassment, is it possible that there was another reason that Nick and Heidi kept this secret?
Nick and Heidi had a very traditional marriage from the standpoint of the church. Nick, being the male, took care of the finances. Heidi took care of some of the plans and vacations and those types of things.
She deferred to Nick for all the financial issues.
At some point, you asked Nick a pretty critical question.
Yeah.
What'd you ask him?
I asked him if he killed her. I came out and asked him straight out.
Nick, part of me wants to ask you this question. Did you have anything to do with this? No, absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. All right. Why is there a party that wants to ask that? Well, Nick, I'm a police officer, okay? You gotta ask the tough questions, all right?
After this 3+ hour interview with police, Nick finally gets to see his family.
What happened when he finally was reunited with his family?
He gave his mother a hug. Nick finally broke down and started crying, weeping openly.
Police camped out in front and back of the Fergus home throughout the day, collecting fingerprints and doing ballistic work.
We are investigating this as some type of burglary and intrusion.
Police have increased patrol in the neighborhood, but say there's no evidence that anyone's trying to target this neighborhood.
After Nick's interview, I think that there was some red flags.
Based on some of the questions that police asked Nick realizes that police are looking at him and he's going to need to protect himself.
I said, Nick, you can't go back and talk to him again. They want to do a sketch with a police sketch artist.
They had produced a very detailed sketch. We received a call. She said, Sergeant Peterson, I know who's in that sketch. I stopped everything. I couldn't believe it.
The resemblance between that individual and the sketch, it's undeniable.
We had maybe found our guy.
Heidi's funeral took place at our church about a week after her death. The entire sanctuary, all the seats were filled with people that were there because they loved Heidi.
I remember hugging Nick and just like saying, I'm just so sorry. I can't imagine what it's like to be you right now.
It was overwhelming. There's a lot of very vivid memories about it. When Nick spoke, he talked about her being an artist and thanking her parents for entrusting her to him.
Nick was seen as a victim and a hero. He had done everything he could to protect Heidi.
In the aftermath of Heidi's death, Nick does finally share with his family and with hers the financial secret he says they've been hiding.
The day after Heidi's death, Nick Furcus and his parents met with Heidi Furcus' parents and laid out the financial struggles, the credit card debt, the foreclosure.
John Erickson, Heidi's dad, was trying to project strength and say, they'll find this person, Nick, don't worry. And Nick's response was just, they'll never find him.
And that really caught Heidi's parents off guard, as did the details about the home foreclosure, which were now making headline news and had people questioning, how much did Heidi really know about their financial problems?
The newspaper ran the story about financial disaster that Nick and Heidi were in, and that was the first that I was hearing about it. I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
Nick was very quick to say, don't read the media, don't listen to the news, they're lying.
I didn't view him as somebody who would lie to me.
The friends were worried about Nick. Perhaps he was being unfairly targeted.
But those close to Nick aren't just concerned about the media. The police were also zeroing in on him.
Nick, this is the thing. So there's a lot of things we're going to try.
My name's Joe Friedberg. I got a call from Nick's dad who said that we have a problem. Can we come see you? I was retained very early on as his defense lawyer.
Nick Furcus seemed to be the victim of a horrible crime. His wife is dead. Why would he need a defense lawyer?
Well, the interview that day with the police, which he gave voluntarily, the questions took a turn.
Do you have anything to do with this? No, absolutely not. Okay, absolutely not.
He was bright enough to know that he had gone from victim to a suspect.
Nick and his attorney decided that they weren't going to give any more statements to St. Paul police.
I told him that if he was going to have me represent him, he wasn't going to talk to the police. He'd be a fool to.
It kind of seemed like Nick was being a little bit of an obstacle.
They claimed they wanted to bring him in and have him do a sketch with a police sketch artist. That's a good idea, but I knew they'd use that as a lever to try interrogate him more. So I said, no, we won't do that, but we'll hire an artist and do it.
I received a phone call from Nick Furcus's defense team. I agreed to have Nick come to my house. He had jotted down some notes. The skull and the ears were covered by black hoodie. The eyes were bulging. He said there should be a little bit more age to them. So I made them deeper looking and asked him, does that represent what you saw? And he said it was.
They were going to come down to our headquarters because we still needed to get a sample of Nick's DNA. And then when Nick showed up, that's when we were given the sketch of this alleged intruder.
It was a picture of a African-American male, perhaps late 30s, 40s, wearing a hooded sweatshirt with a very, very round face and a larger nose.
They'd never had that experience where a defendant hired his own sketch artist, and they were stuck without any context of how this sketch was made.
An intruder was our best possible theory. We all wanted to find that hooded sweatshirt wearing individual who did this to Heidi.
The police released that sketch through the media to see if any tips would come in.
The composite sketch got a couple of leads, but nothing concrete. And then as the years passed, on the anniversary of Heidi's murder, the police and the news media would re-release that sketch.
If you know anything about this incident,
I did a lot of media pushes with some of our local reporters and others. At least one person knows exactly what happened, and we are hoping that that person or someone else will come forward. It revived the case, it revived the sketch, it revived the information, and it brought some more hope to Heidi's family.
Just
the loss of our daughter alone is something that's going to be with us forever.
We received a call. The woman had left a voicemail and she said, I know who's in that sketch. His name is Michael Pye. I stopped everything. I went into our database computer and I typed in Michael Pye and I couldn't believe it.
The resemblance between that individual and the sketch, it's undeniable.
We started researching him immediately and we started to learn that he was engaged in a pattern of breaking into homes in St. Paul around 6 in the morning. We had maybe found our guy.
My name is Michael Pye. I lived here for about 35 years. In 2010, I was a different person. My mind was gone, and I basically was homeless, so I basically was doing what I knew to survive. It was a home invasion, and that's what I was doing, was home invasions.
I went to talk to Michael Pye to the Bureau of Corrections where he was being housed, and we met with him. I showed him the sketch. He said, that's me.
And they said that it was a guy who said that I shot his wife in the back. And I said, I ain't do anything like that.
I hit a giant snag.
Problem is that that individual was incarcerated when Heidi was killed.
Michael Pye was in jail on the day that Heidi was killed.
I got locked up on January the 1st. The murder happened in April, so it was like 3 months apart.
There was no way that he could have possibly been involved in this case whatsoever.
Investigators thought they were finally making progress, but now they're back to square one. For his part, Nick Furcus is moving on with life, even meeting somebody new. Somebody who's about to become his second wife.
I am Rachel Furcus.
And what she has to say will breathe new life into this investigation.
I want people to hear the full story and to know the truth of what really happened.
In 2010, when Heidi was murdered, I was a patrol officer and I worked in the district that she was killed in. And so I was aware of the crime from day one. I heard about it from other responding officers who talked about how the scene did not make sense. The case always bothered me because the circumstances didn't seem to fit what happened. A burglar broke into an occupied house, there was a struggle and the wife dies. Oh wait, they're being evicted the next day? Heidi was killed in the place she should have been safest. And with the person who should have kept her safe. As the details piled on, I wanted to know what I didn't know. What am I missing? I think there was always a frustration within the department that this case couldn't be solved. And I came into the homicide unit in 2019. The case was then assigned to me.
Our investigators held this case so closely to their hearts. It was never considered a closed case.
It was very clear to the investigators that his family and all the friends rallied and supported him.
There was kind of two sides to this through the years. You have a group in the community and Heidi's family that were just extremely suspicious of him. You had a group of his friends and his family that were very much supportive of him as a hero in this.
Nick goes on with his life, and he's able to move on.
A few months after Heidi's murder, Nick meets the sister of a really good friend of his and Heidi's, Rachel Watson.
For the very first time, Nick Furcus's second wife, Rachel, is sitting down to tell her story. What'd you think of Nick Furcus?
I felt bad. I knew about his story. He had lost his wife. I had a ton of empathy.
What did you know about his story?
There was a burglar that entered their home. He fought with them. He was trying to fend them off, and Heidi was shot. And he also got shot.
Rachel shares that she left a very difficult marriage and she moves back to Minnesota to be with her sister, and that's where she connects with Nick.
I definitely felt sorry for him that he had gone through such a trauma. I related to trauma. My first husband and I met when we were young. It was a rough marriage. I was very quiet. I was scared, abused, and vulnerable.
Was the idea that you two could kind of help heal each other?
That's what it felt like. He listened and he empathized with me.
Within a year, Rachel and Nick are now talking about getting married.
You invest in somebody emotionally when you process something so hard.
People question how fast you two moved.
Yeah, how fast we moved, and friends were still grieving Heidi, and Nick's moving on.
All of a sudden it was like, he's got this girlfriend.
It seems like he hasn't fully grieved his wife, and at the same time, we want him to be happy. So we made ourselves okay with the situation.
As Nick and Rachel are getting closer, Nick's family, who have always been very protective of him, especially after Heidi's murder, is now concerned, will people be critical that it's just too soon?
They were so private and would mention that we have to be careful of how we talk about it and what we say, what we don't say.
When you say talk about it, the family was careful to talk about
any of it, to tell the story.
About the shooting.
Yep, about the shooting, about what happened that day. I knew that if I was going to be in their family, that I wasn't allowed to share with anybody anything that I knew.
Rachel says she and Nick decide to focus on making new memories as a couple, starting with their wedding. So as time went on and you two were planning this wedding, your sister Sarah wrote on a family blog, "I got to watch him be married once to one of my best friends who passed away. He was incredible with Heidi. I don't have to wonder what he's going to be like with Rachel. I trust him with all my heart." That was pretty strong endorsement of this man you're about to marry. Is that how you felt?
Everyone that I was around at the time felt that way.
Before the wedding, you had a special request. You wanted to visit Heidi's grave. Why?
Out of respect. I didn't want it to seem like I was replacing her, because I wasn't. I knew I would never replace her. I wanted to be able to go there and say that.
Tell me about that visit. What was that like?
It was strange. Nick didn't have much to say or have emotions about it. I envisioned it to be that he was protecting himself. I imagined it was tough, having to relive a trauma that you had in your life, and I didn't want to cause more hurt.
In August of 2012, Rachel and Nick get married. They start planning a family, and Rachel begins to grow closer with some of Nick and Heidi's friends.
My friendship took off with Rachel, like right away. She just became someone that I loved talking with. They had kids pretty quick, so we fell in love with their kids and would watch their kids for them when they were doing things.
What kind of a dad was Nick?
He was a good dad. It didn't necessarily come natural, but he tried.
Nick continues to be the main provider for his family, still working for his family's business. And Rachel says he tells her that he's no longer in debt.
He went through a program that helped him with finances, and he was able to pay off all of the debt that he had. So I respected that.
They move into a house that Nick's parents paid for.
Neither of us were able, credit-wise, to buy a house. We had an agreement. We were paying our mortgage to them. When it was time to pay the property taxes, he was just supposed to pay it with the money that we had, and it seemed to be fine. I was happy.
But then, one day, Rachel finds something in Nick's sock drawer that literally took her breath away.
What did you think?
Terrified. I didn't know that this was happening, and I'm living with this person. It was a very shocking realization.
Could history be repeating itself? What could possibly be more terrifying and traumatic than having someone break into your house early in the morning and shoot your wife dead and shoot you?
Oh wait, they're being evicted the next day? What am I missing here? He's talking about the gun being chest high, and he says that they're fighting over the gun up here.
Nick Furcus is under suspicion for his wife's murder.
It's just like really traumatic to
to watch that all play out and to see people say things about your friend that aren't true.
The last time he had problems with finances, a lot of things went wrong.
His wife was killed.
Right.
This has been kind of a private struggle for us because we're embarrassed.
How do you go from having financial troubles to killing your wife?
I didn't know what was going to happen in that conversation.
The fact that you're lying over and over and over makes me think
That I could murder my wife.
Maybe somebody really did break in. Maybe it happened as he said.
Little did I know that it was not even close to being over.
Police search warrant! Throw their hands up!
Rachel, you need to get out of the house.
Time is not your friend in homicide cases. And as time went on, people start to move on and people don't want to talk about it anymore and people don't want to come forward anymore.
This is one of those cases that would wake you up at night to think about how are we going to bring justice to Heidi's family.
They would call in April around the anniversary of her murder. They would call around Heidi's birthday. And I know that it was absolutely traumatic for them.
initially it was only Nicholas Fergus's narrative that was out there. Friends rallied around him. They supported him. They all stuck with him. The family, the church community.
Every single piece of the story that he told us then has been consistent and remains consistent with the evidence.
Any hard thing that he's gone through, we've walked alongside each other.
There was absolutely no way that he had been involved.
No. Not a thought at all. How could that even cross people's minds? We were like, nobody thinks that. They know Nick.
Still, there were details that stuck with investigators. One of them was the sketch released that was based on Nick's description of the intruder.
It's clear that Michael Pye didn't kill Heidi because he was in prison at the time of the murder. What has police thinking is, where did Nick come up with that thought for the composite?
In the winter months of 2009 into 2010, that man's face was all over the news as a known burglar in the area.
I used to always turn on the news in the morning time, and I would be the first picture on the news on all stations.
It appears like that sketch could have been made deliberately to throw people off. It kind of seemed like Nick was trying to set someone else up.
To try to frame another human being, that was disgusting. And that isn't the sign of an innocent man's actions.
I was the lead investigator on over 85 some homicide cases, and I still have moms and family members that call me, and they still say, what's going on with this case? And Nick never called one time. He never reached out one time.
Why wasn't he working harder over the years to try to find his wife's killer? Maybe pressing the police, coming back to the police to find out what they know?
Blame that on me. I didn't want any more contact with the police for Nick because all they're going to try to do is get inconsistent statements on details from him. No criminal lawyer worth his salt would ever have let Nick cooperate with the police because the police were treating him as a suspect, not a victim.
But your wife has been killed by some unknown assailant, and over the years, I would think that that would just, at the very least, trouble him.
He was always concerned about it, always afraid that walking down the street someday he'd run into him.
Nick has moved on with his life. He's married, has 3 kids, is working. And it's as if he's been able to get past that really traumatic part of his life.
So you've been married now a few years. Was there any talk about the fact that there was never a resolution to this tragedy that had happened and nobody arrested for killing his wife?
No. I asked him about it and I said, why don't you ever talk about it? and he didn't really have anything to say.
Rachel shares that she and Nick start to grow apart.
We were living in the same house, under the same roof, using, the same money, but there was no relationship anymore. There was, times where I felt like he was lying, but I could never prove it.
What did you suspect that he was lying about?
At first it was little things. I would see wrappers and, things in his car, and I'm like, hey, can you bring stuff from home so that we're not spending money every day on, going out to eat? But there was always an excuse, or, oh, somebody was in my car with me today and they left it in there. You're lying to me, and it's dumb. Like, it's not even things that are a big deal.
Were you worried at all about how the finances were being handled?
Yeah. When you get collections calls, something's wrong.
One day, Rachel finds something in Nick's sock drawer that literally took her breath away. It was a notice that they were delinquent on the property taxes.
He failed to pay those property taxes. If these taxes aren't paid, the county will look at foreclosure on the house.
What did you think?
Terrified. I didn't know that this was happening, and I'm living with this person. I have children with this person, and the last time he had problems with finances, a lot of things went wrong.
His wife was killed.
Right. And so, naturally, that's where I went. Is that what this is?
So you're beginning to think that you could be married to a killer.
Yeah, at this point, it was very possible.
This piece of paper Rachel finding hidden from her proved to us enough that Heidi did not know about the financial struggle because Rachel did not know. That is when we were like, did he kill his wife?
She gets so scared that she grabs the kids in the middle of the night and she leaves the house.
At around the same time, there's a new detective determined to crack this case.
I think she hit the ground running.
And she finds more suspicious evidence that seems to point back to Nick Fergus, including something found in his car on the day of the murder.
It's actually in my car. Why would it be there?
This case had sat quiet for almost a decade. And then in 2019, there is a sergeant at the St. Paul Police Department who wants to take another look at this case.
I was transferred to the homicide unit, and I had an opportunity to take this case over from the previous investigator.
There have been no arrests, no progress, and almost 10 years have passed, and most people have forgotten about it. Where do you begin?
At the beginning, I reviewed all of the reports. I reviewed all of the evidence.
One of the first things that Sergeant Sipes does is to sit down and rewatch that interview that Nick Fergus did with police.
That was the single most important piece of evidence that I thought we had in this case.
Sipes now brings fresh perspective to a number of red flags that original investigators had noticed.
Heidi's only dead a few hours, and for the most part of this interview, Nick isn't crying, isn't emotional.
I know she was hit in the back. It was high in the back, probably. Like towards the shoulder blade, I think so.
How worried was he about his wife during that interview?
He wasn't. It took him about an hour and 20-some minutes to say, can I get an update on Heidi?
Nobody gave me any answers on what's going on with her.
And then Sergeant Gray was able to deflect the question for quite a while. And then Sergeant Gray asked him, do you have any questions?
I just want to know the final answer on Heidi.
Well, this is, there's a couple parts of my job that I really hate. And this is one of them. She hit me.
I figured that.
That was his response to the news that his wife was dead.
At that point, Nick does appear upset. Still, Nikki Sipes says there's something important she never sees.
You would think that if your wife had just been killed in front of you by a real person who was on the loose, you would have some questions of that investigator. What are you doing to find this person? Where did you look? Nothing.
Sergeant Sipes then turns to the FBI to help her with Heidi's unsolved murder.
We were initially contacted by Detective Sipes from the St. Paul Police Department to help with some audio from the 911 call that they had.
We really wanted to hear if you could hear this fictitious intruder.
The FBI took the audio recording to our laboratory in Quantico.
State Patrol 911. Someone's trying to break into my home.
There was no noise that we could detect in the background.
What city are you in, St. Paul? I'm in St. Paul. What address are you at?
You can hear the shotgun, and then the line goes dead.
Minnehaha, everything. Minnehaha, someone's trying west.
And in that last terrible moment of Heidi's life, investigators analyzing the call say they hear nobody else there but Heidi and Nick. Next, the FBI is using new technology to reconstruct Heidi's final moments. But even before they begin, there are plenty of red flags in Nick's version of the story.
He has a loaded shotgun, and he is ushering Heidi down the stairs in front of him.
She's in front because I'm kind of trying to move her along quickly. Yeah. And then I'm right behind her.
Did that strike you as odd?
Yes, he's the one that has the gun.
Why does he let his wife go ahead of him?
She's maybe a foot ahead of him. They're together, and he's trying to hurry her along. They wanted to get out of there.
Still, it's just not making sense to investigators. So the FBI now brings in its forensic firepower to help.
One of the things we came up with was to recreate this scene. So we decided that we were going to get access to the house.
The FBI came out and did a full kind of digital scan that didn't really exist in 2010, so they could make an accurate to-scale digital model.
Nick tells in the interview about how the gun is sort of pressed up against his chest when it goes off and Heidi gets hit by it.
He's talking about the gun being chest high, and he says that they're fighting over the gun up here.
So how likely was that? The FBI combines their ballistics testing with the virtual model of the space to find out.
We put her in a natural position, which is her standing straight up. We were able to take somebody that's at the height of Nick Furcus and put that shotgun in space where it would be when it went off.
They believe that shows that the gun wasn't at Nick's chest, as he describes. Instead, it was higher, at his shoulder level, as a shotgun would normally be if you're going to aim and fire.
Which makes them think this was a deliberate shot and not a shot that was taken in the middle of a struggle. Though Nick's attorneys insist that doesn't necessarily disprove his version of events. Another thing that catches the attention of Sergeant Sipes is that Nick, in this interview, talks about this vacuum for cleaning carpet that specializes in removing blood. And she found it really interesting that Nick just happened to have that in his personal car on the day of Heidi's murder.
It's actually in my car, back of the office. Yeah, in your car? Okay. Why would it be there? Because that piece of equipment is not just for cleaning up blood. I need to go take care of my customers, so I just threw it in the back of my car.
And what did that say to you, potentially?
Well, it was always an idea to us that Hetty planned to kill her and clean up the scene.
Even as Sergeant Sipes is closing in on Nick Furcus, what she doesn't know is that his current wife, Rachel, is having her own suspicions that will lead her to begin secretly recording him.
And the fact that your line was so easy for you to do makes me think
that I could murder my wife.
Yes.
Rachel found the papers that said that their house was in danger of foreclosure was shocking. That was the first moment that we were like, oh my gosh, did he kill Heidi?
That paper changed the course of the rest of the story.
What did you think?
Terrified. I didn't know this. I didn't know that this was happening, and here I am sitting in a position that happened before to him.
The last time his wife ended up dead by his shotgun, and so, Rachel, you need to get out of the house to keep yourself safe.
Did you fear for your life?
There were times that I did, for sure. With knowing that he could do it once, what makes you think he can't do it again?
Once Rachel knows that her children are safe and away from Nick, she decides she's going to confront him.
Rachel's feeling nervous about her safety, so she brings her friend Emily along. You decided you wanted to record the conversation.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I didn't know what was going to happen in that conversation, and possibly, maybe there'd be a confession of some sort.
But how did you secretly record the conversation?
I just had my phone next to me on my lap, and the conversation started. I could get through this if it was just the line. I really could. The problem is the Heidi stuff. That's my problem. The problem is I don't 100% believe you. I said I found out about a possible foreclosure. I found out that you haven't been paying bills, that you've been lying about paying these bills. And then, I said, how am I supposed to know this information and not think that you may have had something to do with Heidi's death? I know it's shocking for you to hear that from me, and it's shocking. Trust me, it's shocking for me to think it.
I don't know what to say.
Nick sits there silently without saying a word. This goes on for minutes.
So I didn't totally understand what you were saying. The fact that you're saying it is so indescribably jarring to my soul that I can hardly breathe. I don't have words, Rach. It is too traumatic, and I don't know what else to tell you.
We're like, why are you not getting help? Clearly there's a problem. There's a history of a problem.
The fact that your line was so easy for you to do in front of me over and over and over makes me think
that I could murder my wife.
That you could lie about something.
That I could murder my wife.
Yes.
And then when you ask him, to talk about Heidi's death, he just puts his head down and, kind of cries, but he will not touch it.
There are 100 things going through my mind right now.
Are you wanting to say more?
Probably need to. I think I'll be open to this conversation. I just can't do it today.
Now Rachel insists that Nick tell his parents what's going on, so they get together again, and he brings them along. You were putting him sort of on the hot seat at the time with the parents.
Yeah.
You wanted him to come clean.
Yeah.
And did he?
No. He sat there and let his dad talk for him. But I don't believe him. That's what's scary to me.
What don't you believe?
I feel like I don't know the full truth.
You're talking about the full truth of when Heidi died?
Mm-hmm. These are the questions that I have. If Heidi did know all this was happening, why was there nothing packed in their house? That's just illogical.
There was the beginnings of packings. I mean, there was stuff in the basement that was packed up. There was things that were crated up and easily ready to go. Yeah. But granted, at first blush, it didn't look like a house packed in there.
If you look at the videotape taken by police on the day of the murder, that does not look like a house that was prepared for a big move out.
You hear Rachel challenging Nick's parents, asking, how is it possible that you had no idea that Nick was losing the house?
Nobody knew. That's just so bizarre to me.
So we weren't super entwined in their life. There weren't grandchildren involved. That naturally gives them more of a connection.
But that was different for their family, right? That they said that they were shocked that they didn't know because Heidi told them everything.
They never pushed into our personal business. Heidi and I decided together that we would figure this out together.
Nick's dad tells Rachel that their lawyer had advised the family not to speak publicly about Heidi's death.
The role we needed to play was to not say anything. Okay. And the people that know how to play the game.
When Rachel challenges Nick about his memory, he says that a lot of stuff is fuzzy.
You don't have vivid memories from back then.
You did, but when you talked about it, it was like detailed of what happened.
Yeah.
So you keep saying that, but that's not true.
She didn't trust him anymore, so she decided to divorce, and they did divorce in 2018.
I knew immediately as soon as I saw they were divorced, I wanted to talk to her.
One day, I get a knock on my door. I think it's somebody that's selling me something. And she was like, I'm Nikki Sipes, I'm from St. Paul Police Department. I want to talk about Heidi Firkus. And I never in a million years thought that that would happen.
The idea that Rachel, who was married to Nick Firkus, he's the father of her children, that she cooperated with you, that's pretty amazing.
She's a very brave woman.
How much danger was she potentially in?
That's a great question. But if I were her, I would have been very afraid when I found this out.
You're potentially helping them arrest your children's father for murder. Were you at all reluctant?
No matter how hard this is going to be, this is someone's daughter. And if I can fight for her, even if it causes pain for me, I will.
If Nick really did kill Heidi, then what's the motive?
Let me know when you're in position.
Police finally believe that they have enough evidence to make their move.
Police, we got a search warrant.
Sergeant Nikki Sipes is still investigating the murder of Heidi Firkus. And more than ever before, she is focused like a laser beam on her former husband, Nick.
She's beginning to believe that the motive for Heidi's murder all stems from the couple's financial troubles.
At the time of Heidi's death, they haven't made a mortgage payment in 22 months. They're $18,000 in debt with credit card bills.
What struck me the most was the amount of money that they had in overdraft fees through their bank. In 1 year, it was over $8,000 in overdrafts.
In overdraft alone?
In overdrafts. I mean, their water was going to be disconnected at times.
It appears that they were living way above their means.
Rather than cook at home, they were out at restaurants, not lavish places, but they were spending more than they were making.
But it was their $200,000 home that was really causing Nick and Heidi to fall behind.
They bought a home they could not afford. And so things kind of spiraled a little bit because of that.
And the day after Heidi's murder is the day they were supposed to be evicted by the sheriff.
Sergeant Sipes and the FBI poured through the financial documents and come up with a theory. What's your gut telling you after sifting through all of this?
That Heidi had no idea their house had been foreclosed on. She had no idea they were being evicted 30 hours later.
Nick says that it was their secret, but the police wonder if maybe it was a secret that only Nick was keeping.
How is it possible that they could be living together and she has no idea that they're in financial trouble?
He handled the finances. They were young. That just seemed to be the role that he took on.
But Nick's defense lawyers see it differently.
They were being hounded by the bank, by mail, by UPS, by Federal Express. There were postings on the door, and all of those mailings were found in the house. Heidi could not have been oblivious to what was going on.
In the mortgage and eviction paperwork, there was never anything signed by Heidi Firkus.
You didn't see her signature on any of these documents?
Nowhere.
No one ever served Heidi Firkus with a piece of mail. She never appeared at the hearing for the eviction. She didn't communicate with anyone, not even her closest friends, not even her parents, about this situation.
Whenever we spoke to any one of her friends or family, would Heidi have told you? Every single person said absolutely she would have.
And not only was Heidi not talking about this looming move with her friends and family, according to the police, when they dug through her text messages and her emails, It didn't appear that she had discussed it with Nick either.
What we couldn't find anywhere in any of the emails was any mention whatsoever of foreclosure or eviction.
I mean, that's a life-changing event when you have to move out of your house. And for them not to have one correspondence about the coordination of this move is very suspicious.
You know, the closer it got to the day of her death, you could tell she knew something was going on with a few of the bills.
She started getting calls and emails from creditors asking about bills that need to be paid.
Every time she would get a call, she would immediately call, text, or email Nick and ask him to take care of it. She was definitely asking more and more about bills. Like, I got a call about this. She would ask him, is there any update? And he would give her these kind of elongated responses, like, oh, I called so-and-so. And so it became very clear that she believed what her husband told her.
Police thinking is, Nick is not telling Heidi the truth, so why is he lying to Heidi?
And I think he knew that as soon as Heidi knew what happened, she would tell everyone around them. He thought she might leave him.
So rather than reveal his financial problems, he killed his wife.
He has destroyed their lives, essentially, without her knowing.
Prosecutors say Nick was two different men. He was one man at church for his wife and his family and community, and then there was the secret Nick. The Nick that couldn't pay his bills, the Nick who was losing his house.
It wasn't just going to be the loss of this house. It was going to be the realization that he had lied to his wife, and he had lied to his friends. He had lied to the community for many years. Through the murder of Heidi, he came away as a victim and a martyr.
It just made no sense that he would kill his wife in order to spare him some momentary embarrassment.
But then he becomes the victim of a crime. Nobody's thinking about his financial troubles at that time. He's lost his wife.
If you were trying to keep this secret, the last thing that you would do is bring in the police because your wife has just been murdered.
After 11 years, police finally believe that they have enough evidence to make their move against Nick Firkus.
We went to his house very early in the morning. Our SWAT team went, knocked on the door.
Police department, search warrant! Here he comes, coming. Nothing on his hands. Hello? Police! We got a search warrant? Okay. Nick, come on. Yes. Go put your hands behind your back for me. Okay.
Very cooperative.
So is the sheriff doing this is all about?
You have a warrant for your arrest, sir. Homicide.
Nicholas Firkus is in custody on suspicion of murdering his wife, Heidi.
Today, we're one step closer to getting justice for Heidi and the truth.
Do you think that he thought that he would ever be arrested?
No, I believe he thought he got away with it.
Nick is charged with both first-degree and second-degree murder.
I thought that was it. I thought, okay, he's gonna go to jail. Little did I know that it was not even close to being over.
The trial for a St. Paul man accused of killing his wife back in 2010 is now underway.
His attorneys are arguing that Nicholas's wife Heidi was killed during a break-in. But Ramsey County prosecutors say there's no sign of anyone else in the home other than the couple.
It's been nearly 13 years since Heidi Firkus' murder, and the trial for her husband Nick is finally underway in this courthouse. And both sides are arguing completely different versions of what happened that morning.
The courtroom was packed every single day. There were people who were sitting on the floor even.
The tension between the two parties was very noticeable.
One family against another family, essentially.
Correct, and families that used to be somewhat united.
It was just like really traumatic. And to see people say things about your friend that aren't true.
At the heart of this case is Was there an intruder or not?
It wasn't a fictitious stranger who was breaking into her home who she needed to be afraid of. It was the stranger she married.
To prove their argument, prosecutors put Nick's intruder story to the test. They showed the jury video of police trying to reenact the break-in and the jiggling of the door Nick says he heard from the upstairs bedroom.
I'm at the front door, so let me know when you guys are ready.
Sergeant Gray stood at the front door and jiggled the doorknob.
Here you go.
Well, they took a video upstairs in the bedroom.
Yeah, ready.
And you could not hear that doorknob being jiggled, which was Nick's story on how he first was alerted to the burglar.
Nick's attorneys introduced evidence to contradict that by showing the tool marks on the door frame that suggest someone was trying to break in.
There were marks on the door that were consistent with someone using a screwdriver to pry open the door. Maybe somebody really did break in. Maybe it happened as he said. And the police recognized that, which is why they seized 3 screwdrivers from the house and from Heidi and Nick's cars and compared them to the tool marks, and none of the 3 screwdrivers could be matched to those tool marks.
You brought in a locksmith.
We did.
What did you discover?
He's been to thousands of burglary scenes. He said his experience has been that with a burglar, they're going to attack the deadbolt, because once you defeat the deadbolt, you've got the door.
But there was no evidence that anybody had tried to pry open the deadbolt.
And he also said they don't care about damage. All they care about is getting in and getting in fast.
The locksmith had never seen a burglary with so little damage to a door.
At 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, when you expect people to be sleeping in the house, you do not break in by kicking in the door. You break in covertly.
Another inconsistency in Nick's story? Prosecutors say that undisturbed table in the foyer.
It's just inches from the door. And so when Nick describes this dynamic encounter with this man larger than him, you would look and think that that scene would just be destroyed. And yet, nothing was out of place.
Why isn't the table knocked over? Why are the contents still neatly on that table?
Because that isn't where the struggle was. The struggle was as you come into the door to the right of there, as is shown by the spread of the bullets into the door. Look, 4 cops came bursting through that door into the house because of the emergency, and the stuff was still there.
But they weren't fighting with him over a gun.
The scene was not trashed, but there were things that were askew. The front door was open an inch when the police arrived. The front mat was pushed up against the wall. Heidi's shoes were sort of knocked askew.
Another reason prosecutors believe that there was never an intruder is because they never found anyone else's DNA.
No foreign DNA in the house or on the gun.
So what did that tell you?
That there was one person that touched the gun, Nick Firkus.
The guy came in fully dressed with a hood over his head and wearing gloves. He was in the house for seconds. Probably wouldn't be any DNA.
The defense argues that Nick wouldn't have had enough time after Heidi's 911 call to stage the crime scene and shoot himself before making his own 911 call only 65 seconds later. Prosecutors know they've got to convince the jury that there was plenty of time, and in their closing argument, they put on a dramatic demonstration. Show me how you did the reenactment.
I demonstrated with my hands being in a shooting stance to represent Nick Firkus holding the shotgun.
So that would have been Nick shooting his wife?
That's correct. I put down my imaginary gun. I walked over to where Heidi's body would have been. Nick Firkus would have turned her over,
With the timer running in front of the jury, prosecutor Rachel Crocker walks through every step she says Nick had to take.
Picked up the gun that he had left by the door, braced himself against the door, and then pulled the trigger to get that tangential wound that he got in his left leg.
Shooting himself.
Shooting himself.
Drop the gun.
Drop the gun, and then use the phone to call 911.
And you still had time on the clock?
That's right.
There's no evidence that he was able to walk. He had just been shot in the thigh.
You take a look at the pictures of that wound, he would have had to crawl.
Jurors have heard the case for just over 2 weeks, and now Nick Fergus's future is in their hands.
There was a likelihood that the jury would believe Nick's story.
So was it possible that Nick would walk away a free man?
The case of a St. Paul man accused of killing his wife back in 2010 could go to the jury as soon as today.
Nick Fergus is under suspicion for his wife's murder. His trial has just ended, but the jury comes back in 4 hours with their verdict.
A St. Paul man has been found guilty of killing his wife.
A jury convicted Nicholas Fergus of first and second degree murder.
When you heard guilty, what'd you think?
Devastated.
I had to hold Nick.
He started to sob.
Nick Fergus's family declined our request for an interview, but sent us a statement saying they support their son and believe in his innocence.
Nicholas Fergus was finally held accountable. We wanted to do justice to Heidi, and we thought we had done that.
On April 13th, the emotion in the courthouse is palpable.
Yeah, there's justice, but that doesn't make things better.
There are people still affected by this mess.
Nick Fergus is back in the courtroom for sentencing.
You may be seated. The way I'd like to proceed is allow the victim's statements.
I really miss my sister. The load is lighter knowing the fight for the truth of her story has been won.
I know that Heidi was put in my life to bring me closer to God. It isn't fair that she's gone. Nick Fergus has had 13 years to live the life that Heidi deserved.
And finally, this is an opportunity for you, Mr. Fergus, to make a statement.
I do maintain and will maintain to my dying breath my innocence of this crime. Heidi was a bright light in this world. These past 13 years have not diminished my love for her, nor the love that I felt from her.
This was a tragic event, and there are no winners here. But the jury has spoken. It is the sense of law and judgment of this court that you be committed to the Commission of Corrections for the remainder of your life without the possibility of release.
Just knowing what the world was robbed of, that someone as bright and just special was lost. It's tragic to think about.
And remember the man who looked just like the guy in the composite sketch, Michael Pye? Well, he has turned his life around after serving time, and he wonders how differently things could have gone for him.
If I wouldn't have been locked up, I would have got found guilty for it because wouldn't nobody believe it if I told him that it wasn't me. I most definitely forgive him for what he tried to do. I also know in forgiveness, it's a price you're going to have to pay too. And so he's going to have to go to prison and pay that price now, you know?
I often get shocked by my own story. Not many people can say, yeah, I married a murderer, didn't know, had kids with him. There are moments when I'm like, why did I choose to be with somebody like this? When there were red flags to everyone but me. But I also know that I wouldn't have those 3 kids without it. And I know that I wouldn't be the person that I am today without the story that I have.
Heidi and Rachel are linked in a way that goes beyond their marriages to Nick Fergus.
On the anniversary of Heidi's death, it also happened to be your birthday.
It's a crazy coincidence.
Will you always think about Heidi on your birthday?
Always. She's important to remember.
Nick Burkus is just beginning his prison term, but his defense lawyers say they plan to appeal his conviction. That's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
Sabrina and Robert Limon were really kind of an it couple. So bubbly, so vivacious.
They were partying more. They were drinking a lot.
They open up their marriage, meaning other couples have come into the bedroom.
Robert, his words were, "We're having too much fun and everything is fine."
Julie called me and told me that there had been a terrible accident at the railroad, and I asked her what happened. Where's my brother? I'm yelling on the phone, what's wrong with my brother? And he told us that my brother had been shot.
Are you thinking robbery? A robbery gone bad?
This looked as though maybe it had been staged.
Some drawers were pulled out, other drawers were not pulled out. It screamed as being a staged crime scene.
But that crime scene is just the tip of the iceberg.
Hi, God. We're on Sterling. We have been dirtbags. We've been sinners. We've been selfish. We've sinned.
For a whodunit that's boiling underneath.
This investigation takes cops down a very unusual road that involves God and David and Bathsheba and murder.
A monster took our Robert's life.
As you're coming down Route 66 and you turn into the Silver Lakes community, it is hard to not compare this place to a desert oasis.
Silver Lake's a small community. It's about 99 miles from Los Angeles, halfway between Victorville and Barstow.
There are 2 lakes here. It is a family-orientated place, and there's so many opportunities for families to have a very affordable living in a beautiful neighborhood.
Some people move to Silver Lakes to either retire or to have more of a private, like less city life.
And it's in Silver Lakes where Robert and Sabrina Limon live with their 2 children.
And just to put the icing on the cake of this picture of domesticity, the street they lived on was Strawberry Lane.
Sabrina is my baby sister. She was born when I was 15 years old, and we've just had a bond ever since she was born. We grew up in Barstow, and I got married to Randy, so I moved out at 18, and Randy and I had this little home, and so Sabrina would come and she would stay with us. She was always trying to entertain. She has such a talent just to be an amazing, funny person, even when she was little. And every time we'd take a picture, we'd do, let's do a Brina picture, and we would all do our hands. So it was just something that she took on when she was little, and it stuck with her all this time.
She was just so sweet. She just had just a heart for people, just sweet. She was just so loving.
My dad had decided that he was going to retire, and his dream was to retire in Prescott, Arizona. So Sabrina was, I want to say 13, and she made a lot of wonderful friends there, and that's where she met Robert, was in Prescott.
At the age of 18, Sabrina meets Robert Limon, and it's an instant attraction.
Here he was with the big tattoo, Lamone, tatted on the back of his head, but he was a big teddy bear.
He wanted us to meet his girlfriend. We were all sitting in the kitchen, and Robert pulls up in his truck, and Sabrina gets out, and I looked out the window, and I told Mom, Robert's going to marry her.
Robert and Sabrina had a total connection, and they started to go to church, and then when they were going to get married, they were baptized together. Sabrina and Robert got married in 2000. The wedding was in Arizona, and it was just a beautiful wedding. I was the maid of honor, and Sabrina was just a beautiful bride.
Not long after their wedding, Sabrina and Rob moved to Silver Lakes, a low-key desert community in California. And with the help of Julie's husband, Randy, Rob gets a job working at BNSF Railroad in Barstow.
When they moved to Silver Lakes, they went to church for a few years, but Sabrina's faith never wavered. She always had her Bible.
The family life for the Lamones was brilliant. It was loving. Sabrina devoted her life to her children. That was her number one priority, and she was, by choice, a stay-at-home mom. Robert was really hardworking, reliable. They were also a family that liked to have fun. They had a lot of friends.
When we lived in Silver Lakes, I was a stay-at-home mom. We had 2 children, and I was married to a fireman.
Nicolette asked us not to use her last name.
I met Rob and Sabrina on our son's t-ball team.
Sabrina and Robert Lamone were really kind of an it couple. And all the photos you see of them, all the stories you hear about them, they seem so bubbly, so vivacious.
Rob and Sabrina would have people come to their house, to have gatherings, or they would be drinking. Rob and Sabrina, they seemed very happy.
They were always calling each other sweet little names, always kissing each other, laughing a lot.
A lot of people wanted their husbands to be like Rob just because he was very in tune with Sabrina. Like, he gave her everything.
They weren't just a tight family, they also had a core group of friends, other couples. They called themselves the Wolf Pack. And there was a lot of boating and partying.
There was a group of friends that hung out with them, and they would go a lot of places together. I wasn't friends with anybody that was a part of it. It was after me.
Among this wolf pack is a couple, Jason and Kelly Bernatine. They were particularly close to Sabrina and Robert. Jason was a firefighter, and Kelly was a hairstylist. In fact, that's how she met Sabrina.
Kelly Bernatine is the one that started the wolf pack. Sabrina would tell me when she first met Kelly, Kelly was just the greatest thing ever.
So between 2000 and 2008, it's a pretty steady marriage. Great family life, great social life, everything going well. But in 2008, something starts happening in this relationship.
Sabrina would invite everyone over to their house. Sometimes you couldn't even fit into the house.
We all lived within a mile of each other or less. So Rob and Sabrina would come to our house, we'd go to their house. But it was pretty much like eating and drinking.
Sabrina was drinking so much all the time that she was pretty numb, I think, to a lot of things, but she didn't share with me what was going on.
It always stuck in my head of, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, is always what she said, because she just always wanted to drink.
Sabrina did not ask for help. I would talk to her about it, and she'd be like, "Oh, Julie, I'm fine." It was the same thing with me. If we didn't admit it, it wasn't real.
And that may be one of the first indications that things aren't as happy and nice as they appear.
It was during this time of heavy partying that the couple decided to shake up their marriage. And this beautiful family portrait would be shattered for good.
was engineered to assist trains in not going too fast as they're coming down the mountains from Mojave into Tehachapi.
Robert was known as a rapid responder. He would fill in for other people who needed some time off at the last second.
Robert would have to go to wherever the problem was on the train. So if the train broke down, then he would go out and he would fix it.
When they're stopped, it's not uncommon for someone to break into the trains and steal the contents of its cargo.
Robert came across a bear one time. It was a very dangerous job. For one person to work that job is just unreal to me.
By all accounts, Rob loved the railroad. He not only worked in Tehachapi on a part-time basis, but he also worked in the rail yard in Barstow. That fascination with the railroad came from his dad.
My dad started with the railroad, working with a group in the railroad called the Tie Gang. Just a day in, day out. All they did was change railroad tracks.
Because of that job, Rob's father had to move a lot. That's how the family wound up in small rural towns throughout Arizona.
Shortly after my parents' divorce in '86, they moved to Mojave, Arizona, where my brother finished off his last couple of years of high school. Really loved playing football. He played a defensive end or defensive tackle.
Well, Robert Moan was one of my special kids. Personally coached him in football. I paid more attention to him because I could tell that he needed somebody to guide him along. He needed that person that would pat him on the back. Rob stood out to a lot of people because to make ends meet, Rob would bring homemade burritos that his family would make, which were delicious, and he would sell them at school. And the money he raised helped support his family.
My dad, when he was home on weekends, him and Robert would go out and my dad would sell burritos to people along the railroad. I think that's where Robert got a lot of his social behavior from, is just hanging out with Dad and going out and meeting people.
By 2000, Rob is happily married to Sabrina, living in Silver Lakes and working that dream job with BNSF Railroad. Their lives seemed to be pretty good. But the reality was much darker with what was going on behind closed doors.
In 2008, Rob and Sabrina decided mutually that they wanted to have a little bit more excitement in their relationship.
I saw a difference in Robert and Sabrina's marriage. Not so much their marriage, but their way of living and their lifestyle.
And they started to have relations with other couples.
Sabrina and I were out one night. I dropped her off at her house in her driveway and she propositioned me for her and Rob. And I told her, no, I'm married. Like, I was kind of like shocked. And then she was like, oh, okay, well, let me talk to Rob. And I'm like, what? So it just caught me off guard and I'm thinking this is what they do. And then eventually, I don't even know, a couple weeks later, something ended up where it happened. My husband and I at the time had agreements that like we were gonna kiss, we knew that we would talk about it. It only happened a couple of times and that was it. A lot of the community already knew that like Rob and Sabrina had an open marriage in a roundabout way.
Another couple also involved with Rob and Sabrina at the time were friends from the Wolf Pack, Jason and Kelly Bernatine.
They went on adult vacations. They went out boating. They partied a lot at the North Lake.
It was usually Sabrina and I, and then we would go have sex with our husbands.
Sabrina, she was tired of being in an open marriage.
I remember her saying Rob would kind of insinuate her to change certain things about her. He did tell her something that he must have liked about me to change on her, and she had brought it to my attention, and I just thought that was wrong. I just told him I wouldn't want my husband telling me something about another woman.
We opened our marriage bed, and it changed the dynamics of our sacred bond as soon as we made that choice together.
Some say it was Sabrina's idea. Others say Rob was into it. Unless we were flies on the wall in the bedroom, we won't know for sure.
The only thing she complained about is that she wanted to go back to church, and she wanted Robert to go back to church. Robert, he felt like they would be hypocrites if they went back to church. Robert didn't want to change back. He wanted to continue with the fun and all that they were doing. Despite the open marriage, Robert and Sabrina still loved each other.
On August 17th, 2014, Rob is filling in for a co-worker. And that morning, like he's done so many other times, he drives the 85 miles to Tehachapi. When Rob isn't on call fixing broken down trains, he is typically in the BNSF office, which is a nondescript industrial warehouse on the outskirts of town.
It's on Goodrich Drive, which is a one-way in and one-way out street. So if you're going to go there, that's going to either be you have a destination or you're lost.
Robert was due to get off at 7 in the evening and return home to his wife and kids.
I talked to Sabrina a few times later on that evening, and then she's like, I keep trying to get a hold of Rob. I can't get a hold of him. Her daughter was waiting up for him because it was going to be her first day of school, and she wanted to give her daddy a kiss goodnight. And I said, oh, Brianna, he'll call you. Maybe he's out on a train or something.
Around 7 p.m., Rob's replacement shows up to take over the shift. Immediately, he sees things don't seem right.
Their daughter wanted to talk to him on the phone, desperately. And they just kept calling and calling and calling. And there was no answer.
Julie called me. I asked her what happened, where's my brother? And I could hear the phone drop.
On August 17th, 2014, it's a Sunday. Robert Limon is working at the rail yard in Tehachapi. He's covering a shift for someone else. It's about 7 p.m. when his co-worker walks into the office and finds Robert Limon bleeding on the ground. He calls 911.
There's a call that comes in.
There is.
A man has been shot.
What happens on that type of a call is the homicide unit gets a call. The guys come up here from the unit, as well as our technical investigators.
Railroad tracks here.
Yes.
So this is the train?
Yes, this is the train that comes through Tehachapi. And we're pulling onto Goodrich Drive now, which is the one-way in and one-way out. And as we're coming to the industrial complex...
This is way back off the beaten path.
It is. It absolutely is. That's why I believe that someone who was purposely had to come here or they were lost.
The body is found inside this warehouse used by the BNSF Railway. What do the detectives find once they get here?
As they arrive here, this roll-up door, this large roll-up door, is open. Inside, there is a large work truck. Next to the truck, near the driver's door, there is Robert Limon. And he's sort of propped up against the truck.
And what kind of condition was Robert Limon in? He had been shot once, twice?
Twice. Yes, he'd been shot in the upper torso area and in the head.
When I arrived during the walkthrough, I observed he was laying next to a refrigerator. This photograph here is significant. We found that there was blood spatter on the side of the refrigerator door. There was blood starting to pool underneath his body. We did find an expended bullet that was on the ground just above Rob's head.
And they also found the office inside had been sort of ransacked, and they found drawers pulled from a desk. They found binders and shop manuals and things on the floor.
Are you thinking robbery? A robbery gone bad?
Initially, yes, it did look that way.
What leads you to think that that's not the case?
So as we begin looking at the crime scene itself and you're finding shop manuals pulled out onto the ground, it's very odd that you can't steal those and trade them. And generally people who commit crimes murder and things like that are looking for fast money. And we sort of determined that, this looked as though maybe it had been staged.
So your hunch was that this wasn't a legitimate robbery, that somebody tried to make it look like it was a robbery?
Yes. When detectives contacted Sabrina Limon and informed her that her husband had been, in fact, murdered, her actions and her demeanor was appropriate. I mean, she was crying.
I got a phone call, and it was Sabrina, and she was just screaming and asking me to go over to her house. And I know that I kept saying, "Are you sure it was Robert?" Because Robert was so strong. We couldn't believe it. We just couldn't believe it.
I got the call August the 17th. Julie called me and told me that there had been a terrible accident at the railroad and my brother was no longer with us. And I asked her, "What happened? Where's my brother? What happened to my brother?" And I could hear the phone drop. And then I'm yelling on the phone, "What's wrong with my brother?" And Randy got on the phone. Told us that my brother had been shot.
I was called the very next morning by a friend of mine that lived in Silver Lakes, telling me that Rob had been killed, and I felt so bad for the kids.
With detectives sorting out the crime scene and processing evidence, Rob's family is coming together to make funeral arrangements.
When my brother passed away, we were at Sabrina's house, and Julie took me into the back bedroom. And Sabrina didn't want to talk about the services, arrangements, and the funeral and all that. She just wasn't dealing with it.
There were people everywhere. I mean, it was overwhelming. Sabrina stayed in her room most of the time. She just had a hard time. It was unbelievable.
So a few days following Robert Lamone's death, there was a memorial held at a local Hellendale church where hundreds of people gathered. He was somebody who was beloved by many in that community, so they gathered to pay their respects.
What were you learning about this guy, Robert Limon, as you began to ask people about him?
We began interviewing his family and friends, and they said that he was a great guy. Everyone that we spoke with said that he was just a fantastic person, and he was sort of the husband that every woman would want. I think we got nothing but praise about him from family and friends.
I was shocked that Rob got killed. I mean, that was the last person you would think that would ever get killed. Rob was just such a good person. I mean, he was a great dad.
Detectives didn't really know who might have committed this murder. Robert didn't have any enemies. Nobody seemed to have any animosity toward him.
No eyewitnesses, no apparent evidence here at the scene. So you just have to start looking.
The following day, during daylight hours, we came out and began canvassing the area. And upon doing so, we found this video surveillance camera right here. And this is the camera that actually captures the only footage we had for that entire day of anyone within this complex. This is the camera that captured the person walking through the complex with an exaggerated limp, walking towards the BNSF location where Rob was found dead.
You were just hoping that this would show you something.
We thought this would be great. There's the potential this is going to actually have footage of the person who committed this crime.
Robert was a rapid responder for the railway and was returning to the shop after work when he was attacked.
Rob Limon is dead after being shot twice. Now, detectives are asking the same question that's being asked from Tehachapi all the way to Silver Lakes. Why?
No one had any reason to suspect or know of anyone that wanted Robert Limon killed or dead. He was well liked by everyone, and no one could imagine any reason why someone would want to kill Robert.
When police found Robert Limon on the ground suffering from the gunshots, they started to look around the office. They found the place really ransacked and disheveled. But what was really interesting as they thought about could this have been a robbery was there was no money really being held at the rail yard.
Each and every single one of us had the overwhelming opinion that the office within this BNSF railroad complex, it appears that the crime scene had been staged.
So the Kern County Sheriff's Department and the investigators were spending a lot of time with Sabrina Limon trying to gather information about who might have had a motive to harm Robert Limon.
When I asked her about her marriage with Rob, she said everything was great. She said there was no extramarital relationships that she was involved in or she was aware that Rob was involved in. And so at that point in time, she wasn't able to provide us any information with respect to who may have killed Rob.
The expended bullet that investigators find at the crime scene is fragmented and is of no evidentiary value. And there are no shell casings at the scene either. But during the autopsy, investigators catch a break.
We discovered that the gun used in this case was a larger caliber, probably a 44 Magnum or a 45 or possibly larger. So we were looking for, in all likelihood, a handgun of larger caliber.
Investigators now know what kind of weapon they're looking for, and they soon get a promising lead from a local gunsmith.
We received a tip that someone went into a local gun store in Tehachapi and requested that their firing pin be replaced.
Detectives were hopeful that this was possibly a great lead, and this could possibly be the gun that was actually used in Rob's murder.
But any hope for a quick resolution is short-lived.
We seized the gun in question, had it examined, and had it compared to the bullet that was found at the scene, and we found that the two did not match.
This is soon a tireless investigation with detectives searching the crime scene, looking at surveillance cameras, hoping they might have captured a possible suspect. The first camera they check is actually in the garage where the murder happened.
So this is a photograph of the truck that Rob was driving that evening during a shift. We were hopeful initially that we might be able to get some video surveillance from, being that many of the trucks are equipped with cameras, but unfortunately the cameras are running 24/7 and they're only recording when they're actually being operated.
We began canvassing the area, and upon doing so, we found this video surveillance camera right here.
And once you began to look at the surveillance video from this camera, what did you see exactly?
We saw a subject. You couldn't really tell his age. The quality of the video is not the best, and you could see him walking with a limp through the complex and then towards, once again, where...
Down this way.
Correct, where the BNSF rail business is located.
Was it clear enough that you could make out whether it was a man or a woman or older?
You could tell that it was a man. I think that's fair to say it was a man. But anything other than that, age, ethnicity, no.
And when you saw that person walking over here, did you think that could be your suspect?
It's a very high potential that it could have been.
You see a guy on security footage, you're gonna get excited. Who else could it be? It seems so promising.
Did people recognize the person? Were you able to get a good look at this person?
The only video we released was the person in the industrial complex. Some of the tips we got led us to a local transient that people believed could have been potentially involved. And we were able to locate that person and ultimately eliminate them as the suspect.
We were back to square one without a whole lot of leads to follow up on.
Sabrina and her family and the detectives aren't the only people desperate for answers. The people at BNSF Railroad also want to help.
BNSF Railway is now offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in the murder of one of its employees.
Detectives get some leads from the reward offer, but it's the discovery of more surveillance video from a nearby company that helps open up the investigation.
Video surveillance footage did in fact show Rob Limon driving on Goodrick Drive.
So you began looking deeper.
On the day in question, there was multiple vehicles that were on Goodrick Drive where Rob Limon was located. We were able to identify every person driving those vehicles on that day, with the exception of a lone motorist on a motorcycle. The video surveillance captured a subject riding his motorcycle eastbound on Goodrick Drive, and then a short time later, he was leaving Goodrick and westbound.
Adding to that suspicion, the motorcycle is spotted around the same time investigators think Robert Limon was murdered. But the driver of that motorcycle is a mystery.
So the investigation was slow, but on September 1st, 2014, investigators received a call that changed the entire course of the investigation.
Robert Lamone's friend contacted us and told us that he received a very odd message left on his cellular phone from a subject whom identified as Jonathan Hearn. He thought what was very odd about the voice messages is that Jonathan seemed very apologetic for Rob's death.
But who exactly is Jonathan Hearn?
This is the first time during the investigation that we heard the name Jonathan Hearn.
Once detectives speak with Mr. Hearn, they are suddenly led down a whole new investigative path. About 3 weeks after Robert was murdered, police got a game-changing phone call from Robert's good friend, Jason Bernatine. It really changes the face of everything.
Detectives really didn't have any strong leads in this investigation until Jason Bernatine had come forward.
He had a very strange voicemail left on his phone.
Jason told us that Sabrina was possibly involved with a Redlands fireman by the name of Jonathan Hearn.
Jason Bernatine knew Jonathan Hearn due to they're both firefighters and that they used to work with one another, especially when Jonathan was a paramedic on an ambulance crew. So they ran calls together.
Jonathan Hearn grew up a little bit sheltered, it seemed. He was a good-looking guy, really fit, and I think he was incredibly ambitious too, especially for his age.
Jonathan Hearn.
Jonathan graduated from his paramedic program with honors, even got an award for outstanding performance.
Jonathan Hearn really did have a natural instinct to draw people in. He's a first responder. He took care of elderly ladies, and he would make them feel okay and everything's fine.
Had you heard of Jonathan Hearn before?
No, we had not.
So what did he tell you about Jonathan Hearn?
He knew that Jonathan Hearn actually had possibly a dating or romantic relationship with Sabrina Lamone outside of Robert Lamone. It was odd and suspicious in the fact that Jonathan called Jason and apologized to him for having this relationship with Sabrina outside of Rob's knowledge.
Then shortly after the voicemail, Jason Bernatine has something new to turn over to cops, and that's the strangest of letters from Jonathan Hearn.
In that letter to Jason, Jonathan repeatedly asks for forgiveness from the Bernatines, but he never explains why he's asking for it. The first and biggest regret left undone was my sin against you. With no further ado, please let me ask for your forgiveness. I'm sorry for being prideful, for being selfish, and for being disrespectful. For you as an investigator, you're thinking,
why would you write this letter after the fact? Rob's dead, and this is just odd. This is just very odd behavior from this person.
Jonathan Hearn was originally not on our radar whatsoever. When Jason came to us and told us about Sabrina and Jonathan's possible relationship, we immediately started looking into Jonathan to find out if we could make any sort of connection or a link to Rob.
Detectives are blasting through this new lead with Jonathan Hearn, and they learn all kinds of things.
Now, what about Rob Lamone? Are you learning anything about him and his relationships outside of his marriage?
So it was told to us that there was the potential that him and his wife had an open relationship, meaning the non-traditional marriage with other people within their small group of friends.
So if you know that Rob Lamone is possibly having relationships outside of his marriage, and now you learn that his wife is too, where does that take you in this investigation?
So it circled us all the way back around to Jonathan Hearn.
But how did Jonathan Hearn even know Sabrina Lamone? She was 10 years older, and they didn't run in the same circles.
In 2012, Sabrina went to work with a part-time job at Costco. She was a sample lady, and it was a good match for her personality. That's eventually where she met Jonathan.
When Jonathan met Sabrina at Costco, she realized, oh, you're a fireman. I have fireman friends as well.
They start talking, it's flirtatious. They exchange phone numbers, they have a couple of get-togethers. but it starts to develop an emotional component.
He was like nobody I'd ever met before. The attention he showed me was very different than what I was getting at that time in my life. I don't know why I pursued a relationship with him.
When we learned that there was possible infatuation that Jonathan had with Sabrina, Jason Bernatine's wife, Kelly, actually called us and told us that Jonathan Hearn was spending quite a bit of time with Sabrina Limon at her home. And Kelly found this very odd.
Jonathan's showing up a lot. In Sabrina's home, he's bringing flowers, but bringing his sister with him.
He started hanging around a lot more. He would even cook for the kids.
But what's really bizarre is that Jonathan is trying so desperately to get himself inside this group, this wolf pack. He is really trying so hard to get in there and be a part of this group so he can be near Sabrina. Why is he doing this? Why not just keep the affair going secretly?
One day, Rob Limon discovers some pretty intimate text between the couple on Sabrina's phone. She says he angrily breaks her phone and insists that she stop seeing Jonathan.
Robert was upset, and he wanted to know who this guy was and what was so special about him. And I told him that I didn't know, and I was sorry.
She promises to break things off, but Sabrina and Jonathan keep seeing each other. Detectives now have reason to take another look at that surveillance video gathered near the crime scene to see if they can link it to Jonathan Hearn.
And we began to do some follow-up investigation into this Jonathan Hearn and found that he had a motorcycle registered to him.
Jonathan Hearn has a Yamaha motorcycle that seems a lot like the one you see in the footage.
So from various convenience stores, we began pulling video surveillance footage. And we did find one at the pilot station at a place commonly referred to as Four Corners. The lone motorcyclist comes into the gas station on the day of the actual homicide.
The motorcyclist seen inside the convenience store at the station is wearing a red bandana, but detectives can't confirm whether it's Jonathan Hearn. So they decide it's time to kick their investigation into high gear.
We immediately started thinking this could be a great case for a wiretap.
What we were hoping to glean from this wiretap was conversations between Sabrina and Jonathan Hearn.
Whatever happens, wherever it goes, I love you. I love you. I love you. To the end of the world, I love you.
So, I love you, Doc.
In the days, weeks, months following the murder, Jonathan and Sabrina talked a lot on the phone, and through these wiretap recordings we catch this glimpse into what they're discussing. And they talk a lot about God. They talk a lot about faith.
I want to be used for His glory.
Whatever He wants me to do. I mean, I would cut my arm off. I would shave my head. I would, if that's like what God would want for me, you know, like I feel that, like whatever.
I do too. I do too.
It was quite odd. And in these conversations, Jonathan actually at one point in time talked about a passage in the Bible talking about David and Bathsheba.
I've been reading Psalms 51.
The Psalms are so good. David is a lot like you and I, Sabrina. He was someone who committed adultery. Actually, that's what Psalm 51 is about. He had an affair, and then he even went on to kill the guy, like sent him into battle and pretty much had him killed off.
It's a really twisted take on religion.
Is this just a spiritual discussion, or is it a roadmap to foul play?
Hi, God. We're on our knees for a reason. God, we have been dirtbags, we've been sinners, we've been selfish, we've sinned.
Someone killed my friend. They needed to pay for it.
So you don't hear about big crime activity here?
No.
So to get a call that there is a shooting At the rail yard here. Pretty uncommon.
Oh, very.
Robert Lamone was brutally gunned down at his place of work.
Interest was insane.
I'm more than confused here, Sabrina. I'm really telling you. I think you're flat in the middle of this murder.
Police are closing in on not just one, but two suspects.
I love you. I love you. I love you. To the end of the world, I love you.
A man of God, a married woman, a dead husband, and a wiretap. Something's not adding up here.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're listening to us right now.
It forced them to have to talk about the open marriage and who's with who.
It was like a car accident you couldn't look away from.
I was so ready and so on fire to tell the truth that she didn't have anything to do with her husband's murder.
On August 17th, 2014, Robert Lamone is working at the rail yard in Tehachapi. It's about 7 p.m. when his coworker walks into the office and finds Robert Lamone bleeding on the ground.
Police arrive on the scene, take one look and realize it's Robert Lamone who's dead. He's been shot, and police don't know at this point what they're dealing with.
Police uncover surveillance video that shows a man walking with a limp outside Rob's workplace. Investigators initially think it might be a local transient, but he's cleared. The killer's identity is still a mystery, and Rob's wife Sabrina says she can't think of anybody who'd want to hurt him.
He got along with everyone, and everyone seemed to love him.
So at this point in the investigation, there was really no additional leads. We had nothing coming in that we could follow up on.
But 2 weeks after Rob's murder, there's a development that changes everything.
Robert Lamone's friend contacted us and told us that he received a very odd message left on his cellular phone from a subject whom identified as Jonathan Hearn. So this friend of Robert Lamone, Jason Bernatine, knew Jonathan Hearn due to they're both firefighters. And this was the very first time we had heard the name Jonathan Hearn.
Jonathan basically confided that he was having some sort of a relationship with Sabrina. We immediately started looking into Jonathan to find out if we could make any sort of connection or a link to Rob.
Everything in this investigation was pointing toward Jonathan Hearn, but nobody really knew at this point who he was.
Jonathan Hearn was in his early 20s. He was a firefighter. He was extremely intelligent. He had been previously a paramedic, and he had interests in becoming a arson investigator.
Jonathan Hearn was from Hesperia, California, and he grew up in a religious family, was homeschooled.
Jonathan and I would say that we were each other's first crushes. That was always kind of our little thing, and he always made me feel super special. He was one of those guys that would dote on you. He would open the door. He always had his Bible with him.
Sarah says from the time he was a child, everything in Jonathan's life centered around the church that he attended with his family.
There wasn't a day where we were not on the church grounds for some type of function. We lived, ate, breathed church. He was charismatic, charming, and he loved the Lord, and that mattered to me. I would have seen him leading his own church eventually.
But Hearn's life takes a different path. By December of 2012, he's working as a firefighter, and he meets this woman named Sabrina Lamone at a local Costco.
Jonathan came in wearing his fireman's outfit. They kind of flirted, they had lunch and some coffees, but then it turned into a full-on sexual relationship, and then ultimately a plan to be together someday.
Detectives want to know more about Jonathan and Sabrina's relationship in the wake of Rob's murder. So they decide to tap their phones.
Whatever happens tomorrow, however it goes, I love you. I love you. I love you. To the end of the world, I love you.
So, I love you back.
What kinds of things were you hearing in these calls?
There was a lot of praying, back and forth, as Jonathan is a very religious person, and it seemed as though Sabrina was sort of becoming that same way.
Hi, God. We're on our knees for a reason, God. We have been dirtbags. We've been sinners. We've been selfish. We've sinned.
While the conversations are revealing, they're not exactly incriminating. So, detectives decide to up the ante.
During a wiretap investigation, you need to get your targets or your suspects talking about the crime that you're investigating. The way you do that is by tickling the wire, so to speak. One way is to place a phone call to one of your possible suspects, give them some disinformation that might get them talking to one of the other suspects about what you just told them.
Investigators feed Sabrina some false information that they've got a lead on the person caught on surveillance video riding a motorcycle outside the crime scene. She immediately calls Jonathan.
Hey, I'm not sure what's going on, but Detective Meyer called me. He got a secret witness tip that a tall white male was leaving on a motorcycle around the time of Robert's murder, and someone called in and said that it's someone that knows Rob by the name of John.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're listening to us right now.
This is just so crazy. I can't believe any of this. Like, I can't believe any of it.
One of our detectives called Sabrina and told her that during the investigation that we have found DNA evidence at the scene.
Sabrina, how's it going?
Oh, what's up?
That's some exciting news.
Okay, tell me.
The crime lab just sent me an email and said they got a good DNA sample from what they believe was a sweat drop that was on the floor. And they'll be able to get a good DNA profile from that sweat drop. It looks good. It's the best news you've gotten so far.
Really? Oh, gosh. That's great.
As soon as she hung up the phone with one of our detectives, immediately she called Jonathan on her burner phone.
He just said, "I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of information for you. Maybe I'll have more for you Wednesday."
I was going to talk to you and see if you want to maybe kind of feel him out a little bit.
She should have been elated and said, they've got this DNA. This is going to be fantastic.
That was a big moment.
To me, it was, yes. What was odd is the fact that, Jonathan didn't say, "Oh, Sabrina, that's terrific. They're going to find out who killed your husband." That this is fantastic news.
Police have heard enough, and they are now ready to move in on the couple. But do they really have enough to hold them accountable for the murder of Rob Lamone?
I think he's such a husband. I'm getting killed by Jonathan, so you two could be together.
3 months since Robert Lamone was murdered, police have closed in on 2 suspects, his wife Sabrina and her young lover, Jonathan Hearn.
On November 18th, 2014, the decision was made to execute search warrants at multiple locations and make the arrests of Jonathan Hearn and Sabrina Lamone for Rob's death.
It was a shocking announcement from the Kern County Sheriff's Department this morning. A wife and her lover behind bars for her husband's murder.
The arrests and their relationship makes huge news in the Silver Lakes area. A photo of Sabrina and Jonathan together, appearing close, is published in a local newspaper.
I was at work and I got a call from a detective that Sabrina and Hearn had been arrested and that I needed to pick up the kids from school. And of course, I freaked out.
I went to Jonathan Hearn's home where detectives were conducting a search warrant investigation. I also helped in the search of that, whereas we found a motorcycle, a helmet, a red bandana, a backpack, as well as we found a grocery bag full of receipts.
You have the right to remain silent, do you understand?
Yes.
Now a widow at 34, Sabrina Limon is suddenly facing some very tough questions.
After Sabrina's arrest, she was taken and she was interviewed by detectives, and during that interview, she adamantly denied any involvement in the death of her husband.
I'm more than confused here, Sabrina. I'm really telling you. I think you're flat in the middle of this murder. I think he's such a husband. I've had him killed by Jonathan, so you two could be together. Yeah. And I can tell you that's not going to happen, ever. Okay? You need to get that through your head now. You are not going to be together. You're going to end up going to prison for the rest of his life. And I've got some serious doubts about you. Okay?
Okay, understood.
For more than 4 hours, detectives pepper Sabrina with questions.
If you don't have anything for us, I think we need to get you to jail.
Okay.
What I need you to do is I need you to stand up and turn around. Obviously, since you were already brought down here once before, you were told what you're under arrest for, correct?
Yes.
For conspiracy to commit murder and accessory to murder? Okay.
It turns out that arresting Sabrina for Rob's murder is one thing, but having the evidence to prove it is another.
She was just steadfast. I have no involvement in this, and she didn't really give us much.
With all the evidence collected against Jonathan Hearn, who is still in jail, the DA's office believes it has a good case. But with no direct evidence linking Sabrina, she's not charged.
So you're holding the two of them, but within a couple of days, Sabrina is let go.
She is.
There wasn't enough to hold her.
At that point in time, correct.
After being released, Sabrina returns to Silver Lakes, but with whispers about her affair and possible involvement in her husband's murder, not everybody's happy to have her back.
They would harass her. The kids couldn't go to school. She had to homeschool them. So my cousins, they said, you know what? Come and live down here with us and we'll take care of you.
Sabrina moves 140 miles away from Silver Lakes to Camarillo, California.
When Sabrina decided to move out, we looked at maybe 6 or 8 places. There was one in this community that was off the street, and it was a big complex, and it was right next to the soccer fields. And then she looked at it and said, we'll take it.
And so this is a picture of me and Sabrina at the beach at her son's birthday. We became instant friends. Our boys are a week apart, and we found out that we were married on the same day in the same year. Her husband passed away, and so did mine. She was involved in a church. She's an amazing mom. She adored her kids, and that was her focus then, to be the best mom she could be.
With a new life and now new friends, Karen says Sabrina eventually opens up about her past.
It was one weekend we took my daughter to a soccer tournament, and we got a room for our kids and a room for us. And that's when she shared her life with me, told me what happened, and about her husband being murdered, and that's when I kind of learned the story.
But for 2 years, with Sabrina now settling into a new life after Silver Lakes, detectives are quietly building their case against her.
The detectives in this case believed that Sabrina and Jonathan did conspire to kill Rob. We just had a little bit more work to do in order to allow the district attorney's office to provide us with a warrant to rearrest Sabrina.
While Sabrina is starting over, Jonathan is sitting in a jail cell on murder charges. With his trial date approaching, he now faces a monumental decision.
And so when we had a conversation with him, I think that there were a variety of factors. One of them was that we had trial coming up, and that if we were going to make a deal, now was the time to do it, and it was going to cost something.
We received a phone call from the district attorney's office and said they were contacted by Clayton Campbell, indicating that Jonathan Hearn did in fact wish to testify and provide information.
Initially, as charged, he was facing life without the possibility of parole. And so they made this deal, but it was a substantial sentence. It was still 25 years. Jonathan was going to have to tell the prosecutor about Sabrina's involvement, and he was going to have to tell him everything.
And it was a circumstantial case. Nobody saw this. There were no eyewitnesses, no DNA
just Jonathan's word against Sabrina's.
Correct.
There was a knock at the door, and it was the district attorney and the detectives. And Sabrina didn't have any shoes on, and they asked her to come outside. And she went outside, and I started freaking out.
The way she was acting towards us was like, I can't believe this. You know, how dare you? You know, how dare you come and arrest me? I'm not involved in this. I didn't do anything.
The widow of a man found dead in Tehachapi 2 years ago has been arrested in his death.
With Jonathan Hearn's cooperation, Sabrina Limon is now squarely in the prosecutor's crosshairs.
She couldn't sit back and play the innocent card anymore.
Emotions were high in the courtroom this afternoon as Jonathan Hearn took to the stand for the first time in Sabrina Limon's trial.
It's been 3 years since Robert Limon was brutally gunned down at his place of work. Now, his own wife, she goes up against one major witness, the man she once loved, the man she swore she wanted a future with.
Sparking national attention, getting underway this morning. Sabrina Limon facing murder and conspiracy charges.
It's September 11, 2017. At Kern County Superior Court in Bakersfield, California, Sabrina Limon is about to stand trial. She's pleaded not guilty to all charges.
We'll continue to keep you up to date on our website, turner23.com, as well as our mobile and tablet app. The general interest was insane. This wasn't just Bakersfield, Kern County, where I worked. This was a national attention story.
Deputy District Attorney Eric Smith tells the jury that the motive for this murder was love and money.
Both Sabrina and Jonathan, they had a plan. And that plan was to get rid of Robert Limon. Why? So they could be together. Why? So she could get in excess of $300,000 in life insurance money.
The prosecution's case hinges on its star witness, Jonathan Hearn, the man who's about to turn on the woman he once loved and adored, Sabrina Limon.
I do. Hearn laid out for the jury how he met Sabrina, how their relationship started, and then how it evolved and blossomed into the level where they were having those deep conversations about having a future together.
When I met her, there was a sort of emotional magnetism there. I just found her to be a very entrancing person.
Jonathan testifies that he suggested Sabrina divorce Rob, but says she rejected the idea.
She expressed that he would honestly rather be dead than divorced. Losing her would essentially kill him.
What Jonathan said was pretty ironic because that turned into the next part of the conversation for Jonathan and Sabrina.
What did Sabrina tell you she wanted you to do?
With respect to Rob, to kill him.
Jonathan testifies about what he says is the couple's first attempt to kill Rob. A bizarre plot to poison him with arsenic mixed into one of his favorite desserts.
Banana pudding with Nilla wafers. I stirred in the arsenic into the pudding.
Jonathan says she places the container in his lunch bag and sends him off to work, but then she panics and she chickens out.
She called Robert, and then she told him to not eat the pudding because I think she said that she told him the bananas had gone bad in it.
But Jonathan testifies that the couple doesn't give up, saying they next come up with a scheme to kill Robert at the Tehachapi warehouse.
When you're planning or lead up to the second attempt, what information did Sabrina provide you?
She offered to find me pictures of the facility. She described the office layout and the interior to give me a kind of an idea of what to expect.
was really chilling to hear how precise the descriptions of the preparation that he undertook for that day were.
I assembled some of the clothing that I would be wearing, a mask, 2 backpacks, extra ammunition, also some of the clothing, disguised clothing that I'd be wearing.
Jonathan actually crafted his own silencer, and he made it out of a large flashlight that he somehow attached to his weapon.
On August 17, 2014, Jonathan makes that fateful trip to the Tehachapi warehouse. He says that's him in the surveillance video, deliberately faking a limp to help disguise his identity. Once inside the garage, he says he spots Rob.
At that time, Robert approached. We briefly spoke. He went to retrieve some things, and I went to pull out a firearm. However, the silencer was kind of stuck in the corner of the backpack that I had. So I fired the first shot from within the bag.
Jonathan begins ransacking the office in this attempt to make it look like a robbery gone bad. He rifles through some drawers, he throws some papers around. He steals the laptop that's on the desk. He turns around to leave, and guess what? He thought he had heard some sort of gurgling sounds from Robert Lamone.
I really didn't want to leave him if he wasn't entirely dead. So I went back around the backside of the truck and fired one more shot at him. And then closed the garage door behind me.
Were you feeling happiness, elation, excitement?
Immediately leaving, probably fear, regret, and I'm sorry this sounds bad, but of relief that what had been in the works for so long was finally done.
Jonathan says he then gets on his motorcycle and drives home, stopping at a gas station along the way. That's him captured on that surveillance video.
When you got home, what did you do?
I saw that I had a lot of missed calls from Sabrina, so I called her. She wanted to make sure I was okay, and I did express that I had done it and that everything was about to change.
I think Jonathan Hearn's testimony was particularly striking, mostly because of his demeanor. He talked about the murder that he carried out just so matter-of-factly. It was really strange.
But remember, this is a case of he said, she lied. Now it's the defense's turn. And their star witness is none other than Sabrina Lamone.
You and Jonathan ever talk about him killing Robert? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Sabrina Lamone's defense attorney, Richard Terry, in his opening statements, really was trying to show Jonathan Hearn as a calculated killer who Sabrina Lamone was a victim to.
She was vulnerable, and he played on that. He used that, manipulated her, and he killed her husband. The most important thing I was trying to bring across to the jury is that Jonathan, he had been living a lie his entire life by his religious ideation when he actually didn't believe it.
As they would play the wiretapped conversations in court, really the thing that stood out was how often Jonathan Hearn would bring up God, faith.
We know that you have saved surgery Robertsoners, killers, rapists, adulterers, but God, you have saved us, and you are taking us to your heaven.
Considering all the conversation about God and faith, it was very interesting to hear what he said when being cross-examined by Richard Terry.
Or you really weren't a true Christian if you weren't that devout. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
In other words, you mouthed the words. Is that right?
That would be a good characterization.
In other words, you really didn't believe it?
I can say probably from the age of 18 and onward, it was pretty artificial.
All this, pious front you put on is nothing but fabrication. So how can you believe anything coming from this man's mouth?
And one thing Terry says Jonathan is lying about is that plan to kill Rob Lamone with poisoned banana pudding. Remember, Jonathan testified that Sabrina suddenly panicked the day he said Rob took that deadly dessert to work.
So she called Rob when he was at work to tell him not to eat it. Is that right?
That's what she told me, yes.
Were you ever aware that Sabrina never called her husband those 2 days he was working at Tehachapi in April?
I was not aware of that.
Terry also accuses Jonathan of lying when he testified that Sabrina had given him Rob's work schedule for August 17th, the day of the murder.
He didn't know until the day before he was killed that he was going to be there. How is Sabrina telling you within 2 weeks of August 17th that Rob was going to be there on August 17th?
That seems strange. I'm not sure.
When it's his time to present witnesses, Terry calls 3 people to the stand who are very close to Sabrina, her 2 children, and her sister, Julie.
She's an amazing mother. Her heart and soul is everything in those kids. She had nothing but love, love, love.
Would she ever, in your opinion, be involved in anything that would harm Rob?
No. I was so ready and so on fire to tell the truth that she didn't have anything to do with her husband's murder.
So the prosecution had Jonathan Hearn as their star witness. The defense, well, they had Sabrina Lamone as their star witness.
This time the defense called Sabrina Lamone to the stand. I felt it was necessary for Sabrina to testify because I think the jury needed to get to know who she was. They needed to understand why she had become involved with Jonathan Hearn. Was there something about your relationship with Jonathan that you felt you needed?
Apparently there was, and at that time it became our sacred relationship, and I guess that's, now looking at it, what I was lacking in my life, in my marriage.
But while Sabrina admits to planning a future with Jonathan, she says she thought she could also continue having a life with her husband.
Were you at any time seriously really considering leaving Rob?
No.
Why not?
I couldn't imagine my life without Rob.
Why?
Because I loved him.
Sabrina testifies that any life insurance money that she got was put into a savings account for her kids and to pay for living expenses. She also strongly denies ever hatching a plot with Jonathan to poison Rob's dessert.
Did he ever provide you with any vanilla wafer banana pudding to give to Robert?
No.
Sabrina testifies that she was grief-stricken when she was notified that her husband had been killed.
I dropped to my knees, started crying.
Did you and Jonathan at all that day ever talk about him killing Robert?
No.
Were you aware at that time that Jonathan had killed Robert?
No.
But prosecutor Eric Smith argues that Sabrina was hardly acting like a grieving widow, pointing to texts that she sent to Jonathan shortly after her husband's funeral.
Oh, how I love you. I adore you, Jonathan Hearn. ! You sexy guy. Did you write that?
Well, apparently I did. I can't explain that time in my life. It's unexplainable.
2 days later, I want to kiss you right now and not stop.
unexplainable.
Sabrina is also questioned about those wiretaps where prosecutors say she was tipping off Jonathan about the details of the police investigation.
Detective Meyer called me. She got a secret witness tip re-releasing the video.
Sabrina testifies that she was just following Jonathan's directions.
He wanted to know everything that was going on, and I told him. I trusted him. He had told me that, just the dangers of what could happen when an affair is exposed, how the police think and how they work.
On the stand, Sabrina Limon was very emotionless, just seemed very sullen.
Sabrina, I think, was just so tired and devastated, and I don't know that she came across the way she should have to the jury.
Sabrina Limon's fate is now in the hands of the jury. And the question is, did she make her case, or did she bury herself even deeper?
Closing arguments are set to take place tomorrow after the prosecution and the defense rested this afternoon.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In his closing argument, Richard Terry really tried to hammer home that Jonathan Hearn had an incentive to get on the stand and potentially lie because he was given this plea deal.
He, to save his own hide, came in and spun his story so that he would have a day out of prison in the future and to take away her life.
In Eric Smith's closing arguments, he really points to a lot of evidence showing that Sabrina Limon had to have known and played a part in the plot to kill Robert Limon.
That's in the text messages, that's in the pre-planning, that's in the cell phone locations, that's in the wiretaps. It's throughout, it's replete throughout. She needs to be held accountable for what she did with Jonathan Hearn. She needs to be held accountable for letting her husband suffer, because he did.
After 15 days and dozens of witnesses heard, the Sabrina Limon murder case is now in the hands of the jury.
There's no way to predict how a jury's going to come back. Any lawyer who says, well, this is a slam dunk win, I can guarantee you, are lying through their teeth. I was hopeful that they would acquit her.
So after about 5 or so hours, the jury came back with the long-awaited verdict.
We, the jury, and panel to try the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Sabrina Limon, guilty of a felony to wit, murder of Robert Limon.
When the jury came back, my first reaction was disappointment, anger, frustration.
She didn't do this. I know that. She's an amazing mother, amazing person. She would never do anything like this. When that verdict came, it was heart-wrenching. And we had so many people come up to us and just say how wrong it was. That was not the right verdict.
It was all very difficult to listen to. When it's someone that you've loved your whole life, and you get to listen to people planning what they're going to do or what they've done to end his life.
Sabrina Limon is convicted on 4 of the 6 counts against her, including first-degree murder, attempted murder, solicitation of murder, and conspiracy. The one thing she's acquitted of is the alleged poisoned banana pudding attempt on Robert's life.
We, the jury, find it to be not true that Sabrina Limon placed the pudding with arsenic into Robert Limon's lunch.
The jury did not buy that she had anything to do with that, clearly. But then it makes you wonder, then, on what grounds did they think she had something to do with his ultimate murder?
In November of 2017, Jonathan Hearn is officially sentenced to the terms of his plea deal. He is convicted not of murder, but manslaughter, and gets 25 years and 4 months in prison.
In stark contrast to when he was on the stand testifying against Sabrina Limon, this time at his sentencing, Jonathan Hearn was emotional from the start.
To Robert's family and his dear friends, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for stealing your brother, your friend, your beloved relative, and taking your joy from you. I am, at once, the vilest offender. By God's grace, I am saved. In Christ forgiven.
But there's no public remorse or apology from Sabrina Limon. She immediately files a motion with a new attorney asking for a new trial, saying that her previous lawyer, Richard Terry, should never have put her on the stand in the first place.
I don't know why he would put her on the stands. To me, it wasn't a good choice because it really didn't do good for her.
Was I nervous about it? Yeah. But it's not my decision to make. She made the decision herself, and I think she had to stand up for herself.
On February 21 of 2018, now going into 4 years since her husband was brutally gunned down, Sabrina Limon hears her fate.
Okay, I've read and considered the briefs, and I've heard the oral arguments regarding the motion for new trial. Motion for new trial is denied. Proceed to sentencing.
Sabrina is sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, plus an additional 16 months. At the hearing, Robert Limon's sister, Lydia, speaks.
I believe God gave Sabrina a choice. Build a friendship or choose to deceive by concealing an affair that resulted in the murder of our brother. Sabrina had all the power to make the final decisions to do what was right. Instead, she made the decisions that brought overwhelming destruction, division, brokenness to the two most affected by her actions, her brother's children.
I think she should serve life in prison myself. You know, she cheated my brother out of a relationship with his children. She cheated the children from having a father.
After her sentencing, Sabrina Limon is now living behind bars at a California women's prison, out of sight and out of mind. But could her conviction soon be overturned?
Today I'm in Chino, California, driving to see my client, Sabrina Limon, who's incarcerated at the California Institution for Women. Sabrina's been doing really well ever since she's been incarcerated. Today we're going to discuss possible further steps to take in the appellate process.
How is she doing in prison?
I saw her very recently and I was very impressed. She has a lot of remorse for how her family was destroyed, and she takes responsibility that would not have occurred if she had not engaged in that lifestyle. But I do not believe she should have been convicted of murder, soliciting murder, or conspiracy to commit murder.
On appeal, Valerie Wass argues that Sabrina was wrongfully convicted because Jonathan Hearn's testimony was never corroborated.
If you took away Jonathan's testimony and you just had Sabrina's testimony that she at one point told Jonathan where her husband worked and that he'd be working that day, how does that prove her intent to kill?
But to prosecutors and to the jury apparently bought it, that gave him an indication of when and where to find her husband. They see that as corroboration.
It corroborates that, but how is the content of his other testimony corroborated that she had the intent to kill, that she asked him to kill her husband, that she conspired to kill him? There's nothing.
But the Court of Appeals rejects that argument, saying the law doesn't require corroboration of criminal intent.
I feel that it was insufficient corroboration of his testimony, but the Court of Appeal disagreed. We filed a petition for review in the California Supreme Court. That was denied. She's exhausted her state remedies, which allows her now to proceed in federal court.
Jonathan, now 33 years old, is currently behind bars at the Ironwood State Prison in Blythe, California.
Jonathan is occupied in prison in an administrative capacity, and he's also participated in prison ministry.
And you're convinced that he told the truth?
Absolutely, and I think 12 people in the jury saw the same.
Jonathan killed Robert on his own. An absolutely manipulative monster took our Robert's life. And Sabrina is paying the price for it.
I believe Sabrina only used Jonathan to get what she wanted, and still is not admitting her part in all the circumstances that revolved around my brother's death. These are my brother's ashes. It's a way to always keep him close to my heart. He was my baby brother, and he's just no longer with us, but I can keep his memory and the times that we got to share together, close to me.
While Sabrina Limon will be eligible for parole in 2033, Jonathan Hearn, now 33 years old, will be eligible in 2028, 5 years earlier. That's our program for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
कोई चावल रत्ना दे असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वतना दे असी माया टुर जाना असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वतना दे लवे मोरोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा खड़े उत्ते जा बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना डोला अखियां वेला बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना आया सी मेहमान जना डोला अखियां वेला बैठा हाल फकीरां दा दिल नूं वे चंगा लगदा एक माई कश्मीरां दा दिल नूं चंगा लगदा दिल नूं वे चंगा लगदा एक माई कश्मीरां दा सब चिलसा जिंदगी ते मेल चना रही जिंदगी ते फिर मिलसा जिंदगी ते मेल चना जिंदगी ते मेल चना रही जिंदगी ते फिर मिलसा काली बेचा पीती सोने लोकां ने दुनिया तबाह कीती सोने लोकां ने दुनिया तबाह कीती दे काले नी असी हुण टुरवा चले तुसी रब दे हवाले नी असी हुण टुरवा चले असी हुण टुरवा चले तुसी रब दे हवाले नी कोई चावल रतना दे असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वतना दे असी माया टुर जाना असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वतना दे लवे मोरोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा कड़े उत्ते जा बैठा आया सी मैं